Discoveries Art Galleries Artist of the Week, Jacob M. Drew. Hi, Jacob. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be interesting. I'm talking about my art that I submitted this week of kind of a story that I was making. And I hope that you all enjoy it and to get to know about the behind the scenes of my process on how I make these.
Fabulous. Can you give us a little bit of your background? Can you tell us how you got to this point?
So I grew up in California originally, and that's where all the big budget movies and stuff are, all the big game companies. And growing up, I was always really admiring cartoons and movies and games and how the process of that stuff was made, and it just built my general love of art. So I've been doing art classes ever since I was really young. Eventually we moved to Florida for a year and then to Hoover, Alabama due to my dad's work. And I've just been working my way up through art all the way through the AP art program in high school, and now to South Alabama where I study animation, and just kind of taking art classes where I can and improving myself. And a lot of this recent stuff is pretty recent in my style. I do things, in fact, most of these pieces I did about a year ago now, here at South Alabama.
Okay. Well, Jacob is graciously sharing his screen with us, and he's going to go into his process and how he created these pieces and a little bit of detail and things like that that we all know and love. And so I'm going to bring the screen up. There we go. Okay. All right, Jacob, I'm stepping out and it's yours.
Okay. So here's my most recent piece that I have done of this character. So if you want a little background first on what this character is, and the whole point of it is that this is known as, I call him the Wanderer or Skull. And he's kind of just this androgynous character that's kind of telling this story. The whole idea was that everything is subjective with art, so I wanted to push a very subjective story where you could make your own. So this is the most recent one. It's my first one that I've done digitally, and it's the easiest one I can share my process for. But as you can see, there's a lot of it. You can see the various layers in the background. So I'm not going to be able to see myself showing you this, but oh, looks like I forgot one. But you can see there's many, many layers that go into it. So if you want to see where it all kind of starts, everything always starts with references. I have one of my pieces in my gallery pulled up to, look at his design, trying to figure out what I was going for, like a sitting throne look, how I wanted the body position to look, figuring that out. A lot of sketches. You can see there's many different sketches, a lot of trial and error that go into this. And then I slowly start outlining it after it's done. And then you can see color starting to come in the shades, starting to work on the background, adding in my smaller details, and just until everything comes together. And usually my pieces take about a couple days to a couple weeks. They can really range from how much complexity I'm putting into it. This one, despite it being one of my most complex pieces, took the least amount of time. I tried out a lot of new stuff with this. There's a whole different type of lighting system that I normally do, how I detail everything. But my kind of style is very, you can see I use cell shading in there when it's coming to my lighting. I'm very inspired by 90s anime when it comes to that. And it's just building up every little thing and having an idea. But the biggest part of these pieces is knowing where it's going to fit in the story. So for me, how I organize them is different than how you might organize them, because they're supposed to tell a story no matter which order all the pieces are put in. So the more I've done, the harder it gets to make these pieces. In fact, I haven't made one since about 8 months, which is this one, 8 months ago. And it's harder and harder to put them in together. But there's a lot of little tiny detail. I just knew for this one, I liked the idea of him sitting down, because the one where he's sitting at a campfire is my favorite. I really liked that one a lot. And I wanted to try out something much more detailed than before. that I had easier access to, because the other pieces are done with watercolor for the most part, and I'm not very good at watercolor. In fact, a lot of that texture you're seeing in that watercolor is just because of the type of watercolor I bought, which really helped because it's not really my forte. But digital art, which is what I've been doing a lot of, where I study animation at South Alabama, and a lot of character design is what I do for fun. This is something I really want to try out and really push my capabilities. There's a lot of really small details in here. Like, I don't know if you can see, but I added things like there's rust on his armor. He's got the plants growing on him. He has part of the little clasp for his cloak. There's a skull. And these are kind of all ideas that were to go to a larger story that I was starting to put together, but I felt that doing the larger story didn't make as much sense with the idea of it's a very open book story for you to figure out on your own. But yeah, there's just a lot of small details. Like, there are things in all the other pieces where there's one where he's like in a battle and he's fallen over. Originally, you were going to see who he was fighting, but I figured that's a little too much detail for that. And even in this, there was a lot of things that I took out. It wasn't originally supposed to be enclosed in a cave like this. It was going to be in a very lush forest, I think, which is where I kind of keep those plant elements. But there were just lots of different things that go into how I make these pieces, and they're very detailed. I make a lot of layers when I do my digital pieces, especially. It drives everyone I know crazy, but I label them all to keep it organized. A lot of things. If you want to know, I have a lot of inspiration for this. I'm very into high fantasy. Lord of the Rings is a huge inspiration for my high fantasy stuff. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, but for the overall visual style I did here in these pieces, I would say come back to my love of Guillermo del Toro films. He has a very macabre sense and strange sort of detail where he puts a lot of detail into certain things whereas you wouldn't normally do. So I try and put more detail into things like the hands and the details on the skull and the horns, like really emphasizing those parts of the character. I'm also, the watercolor was inspired by the creator Hellboy, Mike Mignola. He has, if you know anything about Hellboy, it's another more macabre and creepy kind of series. And Mike Mignola traditionally uses watercolor when he does all his comic books and paintings of them. So that was a really big inspiration of that, because I'm a really big fan of those comics. And it's just trying to do something very different than what I'm used to doing, of not making everything super detailed in terms of the meaning behind it, and kind of trying to make it more subjective for you to view. I wanted it to be a very viewer-oriented experience and not so much me telling you what you're supposed to be seeing and getting from it, because I could give you something like that if you would love a really in-depth version of it. Skull, in a way, is supposed to be a reflection of oneself. We're all driven towards different goals. And the idea is that we don't know if he's searching for his goal or if he found it and he's leaving it. Or maybe he started something new. He's just kind of supposed to be a bit of a more darker reflection of humanity. I mean, there's also like a really fun fantasy story behind it that I could make. Like, oh, this is like a tragic accident and he hides himself. But it just never felt right when making these pieces. I really wanted the viewers to experience it for themselves and just give them a general idea of what's happening. Like, you know, how I stage everything is very specific to what it's supposed to give you. Like, here he is in a throne. He's sitting. There's plants that have grown on him. He's been here a while. And all the poses, like, you know, he's taking a rest at a campfire. He's climbing down or up a cavern wall. He's inside the mouth of a cave. He's by a tree and he's heading somewhere. Like, all the action is very specific to just getting it all together. And that's really the biggest things with these pieces, is trying to make a cohesive story without going too in depth with it. because there are a lot of ideas I've had that just don't fit that description of what I wanted to do with these pieces. And it's just very different than my normal stuff. If you've ever followed me anywhere, which you can follow me on places like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, usually just looking up JM Do Art on these places or my name, you might come up with it. You can find my stuff on my website, which is just also JM Do Art. But it's very different from my normal stuff. It's a lot darker. Often it's more detail in certain areas. There's a lot of time-consuming work that goes into these pieces specifically, with the very small details. Like on the older pieces, there's a lot of hatch marks that I make for the shading. My shading is very dependent on that. So the hatch marks, if you don't know what that technique is, that's taking a pen and making very small lines, like crisscrossing and all that, to build up different levels of darkness. And that's how I did all my traditional pieces, is that I sketched it out first. You want to know that process? I sketched it out first after getting an idea of what I wanted to do, looking at some references of how I wanted to pose it, what, the kind of sense I'm going for, sketch it out. And then I take a very, very fancy pen called a Micron pen. I outline everything, or sometimes I'll paint it all first. And with the background, you can see like on the caverns, I do the shading with the watercolor on the caverns, but the actual shading for Skull himself is done with the Micron pen. And I painstakingly spend hours and hours making these tiny lines. I think one of the pieces took almost a week to do for just those lines. And that was the longest part of them. There's just a lot of work that goes into these pieces. And that's really a lot about my process behind them. Not really much that I really can think of off the top of my head that I can give to you. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. That is wonderful. I love learning the process. I love learning how things are done, the background story, the inspiration for that. And that's a pretty good job. You did a great talk for a good bit of time there. It's kind of tough, isn't it, sometimes doing this?
Yeah, I guess it's very subjective, the pieces. When people ask me about them, I remember we had to do our critique at the end of our semester in my 2D design class, where I did a lot of these pieces. Everyone was asking me, well, what's the story behind all of this? Like, what's the point? I said, well, that's the thing. I don't know. You tell me. And they got very frustrated with that answer because they wanted to know. But it's meant to be kind of like a storyboard for like a movie, where you put them in a row and it kind of tells that story, but you can change them around. And a lot of people aren't very satisfied with that answer. So
that's okay. Now this week though, you do have just like you talked about, a story format. And the last one, if you're following his exhibit this week, it's the online exhibit, and it's at USA Libraries Art Galleries. And he actually, the last one leaves you with more questions than the beginning. So, but you won't know that until you follow this week. So make sure you catch his exhibit online as it goes through, because you're definitely going to see that unique style. I do have a few questions for you though. That way we can do about 30 minutes. Are you okay with that?
No problem. I'd love to answer.
Okay, fabulous. Now before we had gotten online, we talked about some of your background. Can you give me a little bit about yourself, how you got here? Like, why South Alabama was your choice, for example?
So there were a lot of places that I looked when it came to college. My dad is an alumni of the University of Southern California, and we're big USC fans, obviously. And they have one of the best film schools in the country, and one of the best animation programs. And one of my favorite directors, Steven Spielberg, actually goes to help teach up-and-coming animators and film directors and all that. And that was a large goal, but a very unrealistic one, as it would have cost a lot of money to go there that I do not have.
Right.
But it was a lot of different schools I looked at. I looked at University of Central Florida. Disney often hires directly from there.
Mhm.
But I didn't really want to move back to Florida, and the general feel of the campus in college wasn't really what I was looking for. And then I was looking more something that was closer to where I live in Hoover, Alabama, that offered animation programs. And it came down to two choices. It came down to South Alabama, and it came down to Troy University. So I was lucky to, in my senior year of high school, come and take a campus tour of South, and I instantly fell in love with the campus
Wonderful.
and feel of the school. And I actually got to meet the head of our animation program, Carl, and got to talk to him about what the program's like, what to expect from it, and everything about it felt right. And I applied for here not too long after. I got an email back saying I was accepted, and that was it. I didn't apply anywhere else. I just knew this is where I wanted to be. I felt like I was going to get a really good education here. And so far, that's been the case. I've learned a lot, and it's just been a wonderful experience here.
Wonderful. Now, animators and illustrators and all of them, they have these different methods and techniques or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite method that you use consistently throughout your work and that you've built on and developed?
So I tend to overthink pretty much everything. So I kind of overcomplicate how I do stuff. But with what we're currently learning right now in my experimental animation class, we're actually learning how to better design and make characters, and really simplifying our process. And that's been very helpful. But usually what I do for when it's coming to my process of stuff, I try and plan it all out in advance and know what I want to do. And then I start sketching it out and doing every little thing at a time until I get it just right.
Mhm.
It's a lot of trial and error and doing things over and over again. With my 2D final last semester, I redid a lot of scenes because I was like, this just doesn't feel good. I'm not liking how this looks. Or my professor gave some really good advice. I was like, I should probably fix this. But our current process is we're learning how to make it easier for ourselves to animate characters and like how to build them. So that's been very interesting, and I've been trying to incorporate that a bit in my more personal artwork that I've been doing. But overall method, there's nothing super specific other than just taking a lot of time to get it just right.
How do you advise people to get started in this process? What would you tell somebody who comes up to you and they say, I want to do what you're doing?
I would say, in the words of Milt Kahl, very famous Disney animator, learn to draw is the first thing. If you want to get into a very art-specific type of career, or even if it's just like a hobby, the first thing you got to know, like especially for animation, learn to draw. If you can't draw, it's going to be really hard for you because there's a lot that goes into stuff like animation and character design. You have to know how to make appealing characters. You need to understand how anatomy works. You need to know what's too much, what's too little, how tall these characters need to be, how to correctly make your proportions, as well as need to be able to work with people, especially when it comes to animation and illustration. A lot of your stuff is going to be coming from your boss or whoever is paying you to do this. So be able to work well with people and listen to what they want and be able to convey that into an artistic manner. There's a lot of listening, and being able to actually do the drawing process is very important.
So what has been your career highlight so far?
Oh, goodness. Career highlight. Wow.
If there's more than one, please share.
As of late, I wouldn't say there's anything crazy. I remember when I was in 6th grade, though, my school got to go to this film event to go see Rise of the Guardians in theater. And all the schools in my area, we were making these posters that represented the movie, and I made one that represented my entire school. And I remember the director of the movie was there, and he announced that he liked mine the best, and he took it on tour with him when the movie came out. So that was
wow.
exciting as a 12-year-old.
Oh yeah.
As of late, career highlights. I'm just very proud of the animation stuff I've done as of late. I didn't actually like get a hand onto animation until I started here at South. So it's been very fun, and I felt very proud of my work, and I've seen a lot of improvement. So that's a big career highlight for me, to the point where I felt confident enough to apply for an internship at Disney. Probably not going to get it. Don't think I have enough requirements right now, but they do send me that critique from an actual animator there. So I'm looking forward to that, because working at Disney would be a dream come true.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so we talked about highlights. With a high, there's a low. So what is your least favorite moment?
Least favorite. There was a time in my life where I was really struggling with knowing what I wanted to do, because I've had a general idea of what I wanted to do since I was in 6th grade, which was animation. But there was a time for about a year where I wasn't sure, and all my art in that time frame was just bad, in my opinion. It just wasn't good. I didn't have the motivation. I wasn't, doing a lot in my spare time. I was only doing it when I had a class, and I wasn't pushing myself. When I look back on that, I just feel disappointed that I didn't try and do more for myself and really push my capabilities. I kind of just got lazy.
Mm-hmm.
But I met a celebrity who I'm very big fan of, and he had said nothing but good things about my art.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brought back that love of it and made me work even harder to get to this point and more and really do more. So that was both a good and bad time that year.
Awesome. These things are important. They make us grow, and that's just one of the things you learn and discuss. Let's see. Well, that's pretty good. Is there anything else you want to share with everybody since you're here and you've got people? Somebody made a comment. That's okay. Hopefully that will happen. We shall see. But in either case, is there anything else you want to share with everybody, or?
I can shamelessly plug my website if you want.
Go for it.
So
can you bring it up on the screen and I can share it?
Let's see if I can. Let's see. Share right here.
Yep.
Is it visible? Okay, so this is my website. I've been working on this for a while, and I recently updated it like crazy. So you can find my website here. It's just a little bit to get to know me. You can go to like about the artist page, give a small description of myself. You can follow my work. That'll take you to a link to like all my social media where I post my art.
What's in the background?
What's in the background?
The tree. Is it a tree?
So this tree is part of a D&D campaign I'm running right now. It's called the Crystal Oak Tree. I actually, if you want to see, I just updated my art gallery recently.
Okay.
So we can look at a bigger image of that. But that was me getting into, excuse me as I go back past all of my character design real fast, towards the bottom. But I was really trying to get into more scene design and getting better at my backgrounds. It's something that I have really been trying to work on because I'm very confident with my character designs and how I draw them. But my backgrounds have been something I've been struggling with. So this is something that I really pushed myself to do. I drew this very gnarled oak tree that has these glowing crystals on the inside, and underneath the tree, you can see that it's darker because it casts like a magical moonlight underneath. And I was just really trying to push what I was able to do with my backgrounds. There's a couple other things on here, like this kind of stuff, more D&D oriented stuff that happened in games where I tried to push those backgrounds a bit more, some things, including in some of my personal work. Actually, this one is just, I drew a character on a photo I took of a tree.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I think there's some up here. Not that one, not as great. Like this one was one of my first like really detailed backgrounds that I did recently. I kept it kind of simple because I was still trying it out. But it's of this goblin in the rain. Very like foggy and dark setting.
Very cool.
But aside from that stuff, you can, there's my art gallery. You can see my character design that I do. It's a lot of fantasy-based stuff right now. But you can also see things like, let's see if it loads real fast. You can see my traditional art, like the pieces I did here. My commissions. I do take commissions. You can find info for that on here.
Why don't you click on it and show people?
All right, let's go to my commission info. This is just the commission info real fast. So
your contact information, yeah.
Yeah, this is like my commission stuff. It tells you like the prices with an example of my current character that I play in Dungeons and Dragons. He's a very big part of my campaigns. But it's to get an idea of like what I do and some examples. But if you want to contact me on any type of art or anything at all, you can email me. I have my email here for you. For commissions, there's a fillable form. If you want to follow me on social media, you can go to the follow my work page. And I believe you can follow me, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Redbubble, TeePublic. So if you click these titles here, that'll take you to my respective social media places and stores. As well, if you would like to all ever watch these, don't need to play them now, but I do have my animation demo reel up. I just updated it, but if you go to the art gallery, you can watch all my individual stuff I've done as well.
So how did you build your site? So I'm leading into different questions, but
I use Google Sites. It's free to use, and it's very easy to use. It's very customizable to your needs. I totally recommend it if you just want to make a free site where you don't have to pay for your website every month, because that was a big thing. Because I didn't want to have to pay for it. But Google Sites is really helpful. You can do a lot with it. You can like really customize everything. You can add videos. You can make, add galleries to it. It's very intuitive. And I would definitely recommend it if you're looking into doing that, as well as just recommending making a website in general. If you're an artist, if you're applying somewhere and you can't like give them everything in like your resume and like really show off your art because you don't want to carry a big portfolio around, give them a link to your website and put an art gallery on there and like show them what you're capable of doing. And really show that you have range to do that.
I would even advise getting business cards, because and that way your site's on your card, because you only have 5 seconds most of the time when you meet people. But I go back whenever I have somebody gives me a business card, instead of just telling me your email address or telling me your phone number while I'm meeting 5 zillion other people at the same time. It's easier to give it on a card with your name and your information, and I keep those and I go back and contact people. That's actually how I choose a lot of the artists that I put in the gallery. If you do not have a business card, then chances are good that I won't remember you to put you into the art gallery or consider you for an exhibit. So, I've
been working on making some business cards for just that reason.
It saves a whole lot of trouble. People say they're not good today or not useful today, but I strongly disagree. I think they're very useful.
I mean, if it has the link to your stuff, like that's a lot. Like if you're trying to get into somewhere and showing that like, hey, you're professional and I came prepared for this, like that's going to show well on you. Because a big thing that we're taught in our animation program is professionalism. You need to be professional. You need to be able to know how to talk. You need to be able to know how to communicate. and show that you know what you're doing and that you're willing to learn. That's a big thing, especially when it comes to art. Like, you can do freelance stuff, which is definitely viable. I mean, that's what I do with my commissions. But if you're trying to get like a stable career, a business card would be a great idea. Like if you go into an interview and, like if you want to see more of my work, here's my card. It has a link to my website where you can see a lot of my stuff. Like I know all my professors have different websites that they've shown us. And that was a lot of inspiration of doing this myself.
Definitely. They even make business card templates that you can print at home. Yeah. And that even saves that expense. So you can buy a package for like what, $5?
Yeah. There's like Walgreens where you can like online, you can make stuff where you can order them from a website and
this stuff has real good deals.
Yeah. And it's not like they cost a ton either. Like you can order a whole box worth of like 100 of them for a pretty decent price. So I mean, it'd be silly not to.
That's a definite thing. Well, we've had 30 minutes, and is there anything else you would like to share with everybody?
No, not really. Stay safe, obviously. Don't forget to wear your masks out in public. We don't want this pandemic's been awful. Stay safe. I want to know that people are okay and that that we can all see everything going back to normal, because goodness knows I'm tired of sitting in my room.
Definitely. Okay, I do have one more question I always ask people. You are at a university, and there are a lot of people who will see this in the future. What is one piece of advice that you could give another student? And it doesn't have to be art, anything.
Yeah. Have an open mind to campus experiences. It's something that I've been trying to do more of because I'm a very introverted person, which you probably would not have guessed with how much I've been talking. But I get very anxious in social situations at times, and campus experiences is a great way to make new friends and feel comfortable in this whole new setting, because it's very different. Not living at home anymore with my family, I'm hours away from them and I'm largely on my own. But having done campus experiences before the pandemic started, it was very nice because I got to meet new people, and it really made college much more fun. It's great. I've made a lot of good friends through that I see as often as I can in safe parameters, obviously. But definitely be open to your campus experiences. Like, it's okay to be nervous. I still get very nervous about them, but be open about it. Like, try and get yourself out there. Do what you can.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being our Artist of the Week, and thank you for sharing your information.
Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my work with other people. It's a great way to get my name out there, and a good experience for me for the future.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.